The flight from Geneva to Chicago landed 30 minutes ahead of schedule. I smiled, offering a silent thanks to the tailwind for giving me a little extra time. The birthday gift from my husband Julian was safely tucked away in my purse, a rare vintage watch that I'd only been able to get using my personal connections. We had been married for 4 years, and our love felt as strong as it did on day one. Or at least that's what I believed at the time. I imagined his face lighting up with surprise and joy when he saw me, and a warm, sweet feeling washed over me. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest stories. Now back to the story. Our usual family car was waiting for me at the airport. Gregory, our chauffeur, was happy to see me. "Ms. Vance, it's so good to have you back," he said. "The boss told me to come at the usual time. He didn't expect you so early." I nodded and told him there was no rush. I wanted to keep the surprise going until the very last moment. The closer we got to our mansion in Lake Forest, the faster my heart beat. This house, every brick, every corner of the yard we had chosen and built together. It was a symbol of our love and our future, a future I had painted with the brightest colors. The car pulled up to the front gate, and I signaled for Gregory not to honk. I wanted to slip inside quietly, like a breeze, and then wrap my arms around Julian from behind. The front door wasn't locked. It was slightly ajar. A strange feeling washed over me. My mother-in-law, Marion, was the most meticulous person I knew. She would never forget to lock the door. I gently pushed it open and stepped inside. The voices of Julian's family were clearly audible from the living room. I heard Julian, his father, Arthur, and his mother. They were probably finalizing the plans for tonight's party. I was about to say hello when a single sentence from Julian froze me in place. "Don't worry, Mom. My wife is clueless. She'll buy whatever story I spin for her. Once she's back from this business trip, a few sweet words and she'll fall in line, just like always. The $50 million from her mother's company will be in our hands soon enough." His voice was filled with absolute arrogance and contempt. The same voice that for 4 years had whispered words of love to me was now as sharp as a knife, plunging directly into my heart. I stood frozen against the wall, my body rigid. The watch box in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Marion continued, her tone barely concealing her greed. "Thank goodness she's an idiot. Really, because if she were any smarter, our family would have been ruined ages ago. You and your father. Just finish the job already. Once that money's in the Davenport Industries account, that girl won't have any use. If you want to get a divorce and marry that girl, Isabella, I won't object." Isabella? The name was another hammer blow to my head. Isabella was the new intern at Julian's company, a young and pretty girl whom I myself had praised to him, saying she seemed bright and sharp. I never imagined Arthur, the father-in-law I had always respected for his serious and calm demeanor, would speak with such a grave and calculating voice. "Let's take the divorce slowly," he said. "We have to make sure everything is tied up and the investment contract can't be undone. Alara is the head of Apex Holdings, and her mother, Eleanor, is no simple woman. We have to be careful and go step by step. Julian, you just keep playing the perfect husband. Don't let her suspect a thing." Every word was like a poison needle pricking my skin. My 4-year marriage, it turned out, was nothing more than a stage play. I was the naive leading lady, and they were masterful actors. They performed so perfectly that I never suspected a thing. The love, the affection, the promises of a future together, all of it was a lie. Their only goal was the $50 million from my mother's company, Apex Holdings, to save their own company, Davenport Industries, which was on the verge of bankruptcy. A sharp pain seized my chest, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling, but I didn't cry. Perhaps when the truth is too cruel, you can't. Instead, a terrifying cold spread through my entire body. The love inside me died, and from its ashes, hatred was reborn. I backed away in silence, carefully closing the door just as I had found it. I couldn't let them discover their charade had been exposed. If they wanted to perform, I would be the one to rewrite the script for the final act. I turned around and quickly walked out the door that had once been my paradise. My heart was bleeding, but my mind was strangely lucid. The plan for revenge began to form in that very instant. I hailed a cab and asked the driver to take me directly to a hotel in downtown Chicago. I needed a quiet place, a space just for me to organize my thoughts. Sitting in the car, I watched Chicago pass by the window. The same familiar streets, the same trees I passed every day. But why did everything feel so alien today? My world had collapsed in a matter of minutes. The man I loved, the family I respected with all my heart, they were all con artists. Arriving at the hotel room, I locked the door and collapsed onto a chair. Silence enveloped me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there staring into the void. Memories of the past 4 years came flooding back, sharp as a vivid montage. The day Julian proposed to me at a lookout point overlooking Lake Michigan, his gaze seemed so sincere. The wedding day, promising before both our families to love and care for me for a lifetime. The trips, the romantic dinners, the sweet words, everything, absolutely everything, was a farce. They saw me as a golden goose, patiently fattening me up for the day of the slaughter. The more I thought about it, the more the pain transformed into a burning fire of hatred. They had trampled on my love. They had made me an idiot. They wanted $50 million. Well, I would show them the price you pay for underestimating this Alara. I wasn't some weak girl who crumbles easily. I am the daughter of Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Apex Holdings, a woman who built an empire from nothing. My mother's strong blood runs through my veins. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. It rang once, and her voice, always gentle but full of authority, answered, "Alara, honey, are you back yet?" Her voice made a knot form in my throat, but I quickly composed myself. This was no time for weakness. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. "Mom, I'm here. I'm tied up with something outside. Listen to me. I need you to order the immediate withdrawal of the entire $50 million investment in Davenport Industries, Arthur's company, right now." Without losing a second, there was a silence of a few seconds on the other end. My mother is an intelligent and perceptive woman. She knew something terrible must have happened for me to be so firm. She didn't ask why. She didn't question me. She just said one firm sentence. "Okay, I'll take care of it right now." Her words lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. I knew my mother wouldn't disappoint me. Eleanor had been in the business world for decades. Dealing with people like Julian's family was child's play for her. "And one more thing, Mom," I continued, my voice a couple of tones colder. "From now on, any matter related to me and that family, let me handle it. I'll need your help, but I'll make the decisions. I want to make them pay for what they've done with my own 2 hands." This time, my mother was silent for a longer moment. I could imagine her frowning, worried about me. But in the end, she respected her daughter's decision. "Understood. Do what you think is right. I'll always be here to support you." Hanging up, I felt a new strength surge within me. The pain was still there, but it no longer paralyzed me. It had become my fuel. I opened my contacts and looked for a familiar name, Leo, attorney at law. Leo was not only my personal lawyer, but also my best friend from college. He was the only person I could fully trust right now. I dialed his number. Leo's voice on the other end sounded as cheerful as ever. "Well, the big boss is back. Did you bring anything for your humble subjects?" "Leo, I need your help," I said seriously, without a hint of a joke. Leo instantly sensed something was wrong. "Where are you? What happened? Send me the address. Can you come right now? It's very urgent." "Sure, 20 minutes," he replied. After hanging up, I went to the bathroom and filled the tub with cold water. I needed to wash away all the filth Julian's family had thrown on me. I looked at myself in the mirror, reddened eyes but no tears, a pale face but with a sharp gaze. The weak woman submerged in a fake love had died. The person in front of the mirror was completely different, ready for a war without quarter. 20 minutes later, Leo arrived. Seeing my state, he couldn't hide his concern. He sat in front of me and asked anxiously, "Alara, my God, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Without mincing words, I told him the whole story, from my excited return home to the cruel conversation I overheard in the living room. I told him everything calmly, clearly, without omitting a single detail, in a monotone and emotionless voice, as if I were narrating someone else's story. Only my tightly clenched hands betrayed the chaos inside me. When I finished, Leo was silent for a long time. His normally jovial face hardened, and his eyes flashed with rage. He softly hit the table, a restrained gesture. Damn them. Those people have no soul. How dare they deceive you like that? Leo's anger was a balm to me. At least I had a sincere friend by my side. Now is not the time to be angry, Leo. I need you to help me. Ask for anything, he replied without hesitation. Investigate that intern, Isabella. I want to know everything about her, her family, her past, when her relationship with Julian began. Everything in as much detail as possible, I said in an icy voice. And also the financial situation of Davenport Industries. I want a complete report on their debts and failed projects. Leo nodded. That's easy. I'll have my people work on it immediately. But what do you plan to do? Divorce him and throw them all out on the street? I shook my head, a bitter and cold smile appearing on my lips. If it were that simple, it would be too easy for them. They've treated me like an idiot for 4 years. They need to get a taste of their own medicine. I'll continue to play my part as the sweet, devoted wife. I'll perform this play with them until the very end. Leo looked at me with some worry in his eyes. Alara, won't it be too much for you having to see the man who betrayed you every day to pretend to love him? I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it. Don't worry, I said with determination. When love dies, only reason remains. You do your job well. I'll take care of the rest. After Leo left, I took another hour to calm down. I called the house and told the housekeeper I had an unexpected meeting with an important partner who had just flown in from Geneva, so I would be home late. I asked her to prepare Julian's birthday party as if nothing were wrong. Then I went to a mall, bought a new dress, and carefully reapplied my makeup. I had to make sure that when I returned, no one would see the slightest hint of a breakdown in me. At 8:30 that night, I drove back to the house. The mansion was brightly lit and soft music played from inside. I took a deep breath, put on the perfect mask of a happy wife, and went in. Julian ran to greet me with a fake expression of concern. Honey, you're back. I've been calling you nonstop. I was so worried. Where were you? I smiled sweetly and wrapped my arms around his neck, a gesture that now made me feel sick. I'm sorry, my love. An important partner. I couldn't leave earlier. Happy birthday, my husband. I gave him a light kiss on the cheek. Julian hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, Thank you, my life. Just having you here makes me the happiest man in the world. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the urge to vomit. That hug, which had once been my warmest sanctuary, now felt cold and dirty. My in-laws also came up to me with smiling, kind faces. Alara, you're here. Have you eaten anything? Come eat with us, Marion said with an affectionate voice. Thanks, Mom. I was so busy with work, I didn't even have time to eat, I replied with a mix of tiredness and happiness. You've prepared everything so wonderfully. The birthday dinner passed in a warm atmosphere. They played their parts perfectly, and so did I. I served Julian food, filled my father-in-law's wine glass, and chatted happily with my mother-in-law. Every now and then, I caught the knowing glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. They were celebrating that their prey was already in the trap, unaware that they were the ones about to fall into the net. That night, lying next to Julian, listening to the traitor's even breathing, my plan for revenge became clearer and clearer in my mind. A few days after that fake birthday party, I started to act. I needed a reasonable excuse to show up at Davenport Industries to see the situation with my own eyes, and also to intimidate certain people. After receiving Leo's preliminary report on the disastrous financial situation of the company, I had an idea. That morning at breakfast, I turned to Julian with a tone of great concern. Honey, I've noticed you've been leaving very early and coming home very late lately. You look exhausted. Do you have a very important project at the company?" Julian's eyes lit up, although he tried to look modest. "Well, a project like any other, but being in the initial phase, there's a lot of work, and I have to oversee everything. I want to share that burden with you," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "What do you think if I go to the company today to take a look? I also studied business administration. Maybe I can offer some ideas for you and Dad. Besides, my mom often asks me about the investment, and I should drop by so I can inform her." I deliberately emphasized the words, "my mother." As expected, Julian and Arthur, who was reading the newspaper nearby, changed their expression slightly. My offer was a double-edged sword. On one hand, they were happy, thinking I was genuinely concerned about the investment, but on the other, they were afraid I would discover something abnormal in their empty company. After a moment of hesitation, Julian smiled and accepted. "What a great idea, my love. With your help, everything will be much better. I'll tell Dad to get everything ready, and then I'll come pick you up." "No need, honey," I replied. "I can go by myself in my car. I want to give everyone a surprise." I didn't want to go with him. I needed the freedom to observe. Around 10:30 in the morning, I arrived at the Davenport Industries headquarters. It was a rather old building in a secondary district that didn't at all match the image of a multi-million-dollar project they were touting. As I entered, my presence immediately drew the attention of the employees. Surely everyone knew I was the vice president's wife, the golden goose about to lay an egg for their company. Julian and Arthur ran down to greet me. Both had a tense and forced expression. "Honey, why didn't you let me know?" Julian said. "I told you I wanted to give you a surprise." I smiled radiantly, taking his arm. "Good morning, Dad. This is my first time here. Excuse me if I'm intruding." Arthur laughed falsely. "What are you saying, daughter? We're family. Your visit is an honor. Let Julian and I show you the company." They guided me through the different offices. At first glance, everything seemed to be functioning normally. But with my management experience, I could easily notice the disorganization and lack of professionalism in the staff's work. The atmosphere was heavy, somber, without the vitality of a growing company. Passing by the administration department, I happened to see Isabella. She was sitting at her desk, and when she saw me with Julian, her face paled, and she quickly looked down, pretending to be busy. I stopped and, smiling, turned to Julian. "Honey, this intern looks so familiar. I think I've seen her somewhere." Julian flinched, visibly nervous. "Oh no, you must be mistaken. She's just a new employee." I ignored his expression and walked directly to Isabella's desk. I leaned in to read the nameplate. Isabella. "Oh yes, now I remember. The other day you said this girl was very efficient and pretty, right, husband?" I said, addressing Julian, but keeping my eyes fixed on Isabella. She was trembling, her face ashen, not daring to look up. She knew my presence there, as Julian's wife, was a strong enough warning for her. I wanted to sow fear in her heart, for her to know her place. Then we went to the conference room to listen to Arthur and Julian present their new project. They showed a series of inflated figures on paper, grand but unrealistic plans. I sat in silence, listening, nodding occasionally, and asking seemingly innocent questions that, however, hit the weak spots of their plan, making father and son sweat to find an explanation. This visit had accomplished my goal. I had shown them I wasn't easy to fool, and at the same time I had sown doubt and fear between them. The game had just begun. My revenge required time and meticulous preparation. I couldn't just withdraw the investment and expose them. That would be too soft. I wanted them to destroy everything themselves, to experience the feeling of reaching the peak of hope and then falling into the abyss of despair. And for that, I needed them to sink even further into the financial trap they had set for themselves. A week after my visit to Davenport Industries, I read in the news about a charity auction organized by a prestigious foundation in the city. It was a major event that would bring together many business owners and influential people. I knew Julian's family wouldn't pass up this opportunity to polish their image and make contacts, and that was also my opportunity. During dinner, I mentioned the auction casually. My mom called to remind me that this weekend is the Gilded Heart Foundation's charity auction. She says it's a very important event, and many of Apex Holdings' big partners will be attending. Hearing this, Marion's eyes lit up. "Oh, really, daughter? Your mother certainly has vision. You have to go to those events to expand your contacts. Of course, we'll go." I smiled innocently. "Yes, but going empty-handed looks a bit bad. Everyone who goes bids on something to support the foundation. I don't know what item to choose." Saying this, I casually opened my tablet and started looking at the list of auction items. I paused at the image of an antique porcelain clock with an exquisite design. "Oh, this clock is so beautiful. It looks a lot like one my mother once told me about. She said my grandfather had an identical one, but had to sell it during difficult times and always regretted it." I said it as if it were nothing with a tone of nostalgia, but kept watching the reactions of Julian and his parents. Sure enough, they looked at each other, exchanging a look full of meaning. I knew the fish had taken the bait. Gaining the favor of my mother, the CEO of the group who held their destiny in her hands, was what they craved most at that moment. In the following days, I didn't mention the clock again, but I knew Julian had already had people investigating. One day, he came home with a triumphant expression. "My love, I've already asked. That clock is a very valuable antique with a clear provenance. I think we should buy it to give to your mother, and I'm sure she'll love it." I feigned concern. "But the starting price is already $60,000. I'm afraid it will go up a lot at the auction. Is it really worth it, honey?" Julian took my hand with a decisive voice. "To make your mother happy, any amount of money is worth it. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Consider it a small gesture of appreciation from my parents and me to her." I knew perfectly well that this small gesture was actually an investment. They were willing to spend a large sum to win my mother's trust and ensure the $50 million were not in danger. But what they didn't know was that the clock was a fake sum. I had asked a friend who was an antiques expert to evaluate it through photos, and he had confirmed it was a very well-made forgery. The person who had put it in the auction was also part of my plan. On the night of the auction, my in-laws and I showed up dressed with elegance and sophistication. Julian acted as the most gallant and attentive husband. When the antique clock came up, he didn't hesitate to start bidding. The bidding became fierce as other competitors, my people of course, became determined to get it. The price of the clock rose quickly. Finally, Julian won the bid for $300,000, a figure that caused a murmur throughout the room. When Julian went on stage to pick up the item, he looked at me with pride and triumph. He thought he had just scored a huge point with his wife's family. Arthur and Marion couldn't hide their joy either. They didn't know that those $300,000 came from Julian's personal pocket, money he had been secretly saving, which had now become a worthless piece of porcelain. Seeing his smile, I only felt pity. The price of a lie sometimes begins with the brightest of tinsel. After the auction for the clock, Julian's family was even more convinced that they had completely won my trust and my mother's. Their treatment of me became even sweeter and more solicitous. Julian even tried to show more remorse for his affair, which he believed I was completely unaware of. But a fox cannot hide its tail. A few days later, Leo gave me an important piece of news. This Saturday night, Julian has a date with Isabella at Le Chêne, a luxurious French restaurant in the Gold Coast. He's reserved a private corner. I smiled disdainfully. An old dog can't be taught new tricks. He had just spent $350,000 to win over his mother-in-law, and he was already going on a date with his mistress. Maybe he thought I would never go to a place like that alone, or maybe his blind confidence had clouded his judgment. "Perfect," I told Leo on the phone. "Thanks." I immediately called my mother. "Mom, are you free this Saturday night? I'd like to take you to dinner at Le Chêne." My mother was surprised. "Is something special happening, honey?" "Nothing special, Mom. I just want us to spend some time together. It's been a long time since we went out to dinner alone. Will you come with me?" I said in a coy voice. My mother, who always indulged me, accepted right away. "Of course, my dear. If you ask me, how can I say no? What time?" 7:00. Mom, and dress up." On Saturday night, my mother and I arrived at the restaurant. I had reserved a table from which we could observe Julian's private corner without being too obvious. We sat down, ordered, and chatted lively as usual. My mother didn't ask anything about my plan. She was simply by my side, giving me unconditional support. Around 8, Julian and Isabella walked in. He was wearing an elegant suit and she a low-cut dress and heavy makeup that made her look older than she was. They headed to their reserved corner without noticing our presence. My mother and I continued with our dinner. Half an hour later, when their food had already been served, I signaled to my mother. I got up, a glass of wine in hand, and said, "Mom, I'm going to the restroom for a moment." I deliberately took a path that passed by Julian and Isabella's table. As I got closer, I accidentally tripped on a chair leg and fell towards their table. The wine glass I was holding spilled all over Julian, leaving a large stain on his light blue shirt. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said clumsily. Then I looked up, feigning major surprise. "Julian, what are you doing here?" Julian and Isabella were stunned. He, pale, stammered, unable to form a word. "Alara, what are you doing here?" Isabella's silverware clattered onto her plate, panicked. At that moment, my mother approached, feigning concern. She looked at Julian, then at Isabella, and on her beautiful face, a brief expression of surprise appeared, which quickly transformed into an indulgent and understanding smile, that of a woman of the world. "Well, Julian, what a coincidence. My daughter and I are also having dinner here," she said in a soft voice, as if nothing were wrong. Then she turned to Isabella, looking her up and down with a gaze only an experienced woman can have. "Hello, you're a coworker of Julian's. You're very pretty." Isabella lowered her head, not daring to answer. Julian was so nervous he didn't know what to say. Yes, Mom. She's a partner from the company. We were discussing some work matters." My mother smiled to herself, but on the outside she pretended to believe him. She patted Julian on the shoulder with a voice full of irony. "Ah, yes. Discussing work in such a romantic place must be very productive, right? Well, we won't bother you anymore. Alara, come with me. Let's let these young people have their space to work." She took my arm and led me back to our table, and leaving Julian and Isabella sitting in the middle of confusion and panic. This encounter was a perfect psychological blow. It wasn't a scandalous scene of jealousy, but a subtle warning that left Julian terrified of being discovered, yet unable to explain my mother's and my strange generosity. His confusion and fear would only increase, and that was exactly what I wanted. The play was still long, and the surprises waiting for him had only just begun. After that fateful night at the restaurant, the atmosphere at home became incredibly strange. Julian spent several days not daring to look me in the eye, always looking for excuses to avoid me. He tried to act more attentive and loving, but the clumsiness and fear in his every gesture couldn't fool me. He was waiting for an outburst of anger, an interrogation from me. But I didn't give him what he expected. I remained calm, sweet, as if nothing had happened. My silence was the most terrifying punishment. Finally, after almost a week of living in anguish, Julian couldn't take it anymore. That night, while I was reading in the bedroom, he came in and knelt at my feet. "Alara, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Please forgive me just this once." He was like a drowning man clutching at the edge of my dress. I put down the book and looked coldly at the man kneeling before me. What a great actor. His tears seemed so real that if I had been the Alara from a month ago, I probably would have softened. "What did you make a mistake with?" I asked without a shred of emotion. I shouldn't have gone out with her, but it was just work. Really, there's nothing between us. Just business, social protocol. You have to believe me." He kept trying to deny everything. I smiled bitterly, a smile full of sarcasm. "Social protocol? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old who will believe those lies?" It was then that I took out the photos Leo had obtained. Images of Julian and Isabella embracing in the car, entering a hotel hand in hand, clear, unequivocal. I threw them in his face. "Is this also work protocol?" Julian looked at the photos, all the color drained from his face. He knew he couldn't deny it anymore. He hit his head against the floor, pleading desperately. I'm sorry. I know, I lost my mind. It was a stupid mistake. She was the one who seduced me. I only love you, Alara. Don't leave me, please. I couldn't live without you. I sat listening to his excuses. How ridiculous. Even at this point, he was still blaming others. But I didn't expose him. I needed him. I needed his cooperation for my plan. I feigned a sigh, acting exhausted and hurt. Get up. Since we've come to this, I left the sentence hanging in the air on purpose. Julian, hearing me, became even more frightened, thinking I was going to ask for a divorce. He rushed to swear and promise 1,000 things. I swear it won't happen again. I'll cut all contact with her. Please give me one last chance, Alara. I was silent for a long time, letting his fear grow to the limit. Then I slowly said, "All right, I can give you a chance." Julian's head shot up with the joy of a shipwreck survivor finding a life raft. "But on one condition," I continued in a firm voice. "My mother is very disappointed in you. She's reconsidering the $50 million investment. The only way to regain her trust is for you to prove your worth. I want to personally participate in the supervision of Davenport Industries' new project." Julian froze. This condition was outside his calculations. I continued without giving him time to think. "I will act as a representative of Apex Holdings, directly supervising the progress and cash flow of the project. Every expense must go through my approval. Only then will my mother be calm enough to release the funds. What do you think?" It was a pact with the devil. Apparently, it was an opportunity for Julian to redeem himself, save his marriage and the investment. But in reality, it was a way for me to have complete control of Davenport Industries. Once I controlled the money, I could suffocate them whenever I wanted. Julian, in his panic of losing everything, no longer had the clarity to weigh the consequences. He only saw it as his only salvation. He nodded frantically. Okay, I accept everything you say, just as long as you don't leave me." "Good." I got up and walked past him. "I'll go to the company tomorrow. Prepare an office for me." The door closed, leaving Julian on the floor with a newly lit spark of hope. He didn't know he had just signed his own death warrant and that of his family. The cat and mouse game was now entering its most exciting phase. With control of the project in my hands, my next step was to remove the thorn in my side. The mistress, Isabella. I couldn't allow her to keep hanging around Julian and causing unnecessary problems. Besides, she was also an important piece in my plan. I asked Leo to arrange a meeting with Isabella at a discreet coffee shop. I didn't want to see her at the company or anywhere that could draw attention. When Isabella arrived, she looked quite haggard. The restaurant incident and probably Julian's subsequent threats had left her sleepless. Seeing me waiting for her, she flinched with an expression of fear and suspicion. "Ma'am, why did you want to see me?" she stammered. I smiled, a polite smile, but cold enough to freeze blood. I slid a bulky envelope across the table. "Inside here is $120,000. Take it. Consider it a small gift from me." Isabella looked at the envelope, stunned, and then at me, not understanding anything. What does this mean?" I took a sip of my tea and said slowly, "I want you to take this money and leave Chicago. Get away from Julian. Go to another city and start a new life. With this money, you can live comfortably, open a small store, or do whatever you want." Isabella lowered her gaze in silence. I knew she was hesitating. $120,000 was a huge sum for a young girl from a humble background like her. I continued in a soft voice, but with words that hurt her pride. "You're young and pretty. Why waste your youth on a married man? Do you really think Julian loves you? Don't be naive. All he wants from you is novelty and your body, say. When he gets tired, you'll have nothing left. You'll have lost your youth and earned the reputation of being the other woman, the family wrecker. Do you think it's worth it?" My words hit the bullseye of her deepest fears. She started to tremble. But Julian said he would get a divorce to marry me," she said in a weak voice, more like an attempt to convince herself than an assertion. I laughed, a laugh full of sarcasm. "Divorce to marry you? Do you know his family is drowning in debt and depends on mine to survive? Do you think he would dare to leave me, the wife who can get him $50 million to marry an intern with nothing like you? And wake up, girl. I stood up and put my purse on my shoulder. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. If you accept, come to this address and you'll also receive a job contract. I'll get you a good position in Denver with a high salary. If you refuse, then don't blame me for being cruel. I left the last sentence hanging in the air on purpose, so she herself would imagine the consequences. I knew that for someone as greedy and cowardly as Isabella, the choice was clear. As I expected, 2 days later, Isabella contacted me. She accepted the money and left. The transaction was quick and quiet. Seeing the money go to her and her disappear from my life, I didn't feel joy or victory, only pity for those foolish women who turned themselves into commodities. But she was the one who chose her path. I just made her an offer she couldn't refuse. With that obstacle removed, I could focus entirely on my main objective, Julian's family. After resolving the Isabella matter, I started my supervision work at Davenport Industries. They assigned me an office next to Julian's. Every day, I arrived at the office on time and demanded all the documents, contracts, and financial reports. My presence was like a shadow looming over the entire company. Father and son, although they smiled and cooperated in appearance, were clearly nervous. They had to hide the deficits and failed projects while dealing with my strict supervision. During this process, I discovered numerous practices of tax fraud and creative accounting. I secretly copied all the evidence and sent it to Leo to keep. The noose was tightening, but I needed one last push, a knockout blow that would prevent them from getting back up. And then something unexpected happened that gave me a devilish idea. Leo called me with bombshell news. "Alara, I have something urgent to tell you. That girl, Isabella, is pregnant." I was stunned. "What are you saying? Are you sure?" "Absolutely. My people saw her go to a private gynecological clinic several times. I've confirmed it. She's about 9 weeks along." 9 weeks? I did a mental calculation. That was just before my business trip to Geneva. I hung up. My mind was spinning. A crazy but perfect plan began to form. If Isabella could be pregnant, why couldn't I? I acted immediately. I had a close friend who was a gynecologist at a major private hospital, someone I could trust blindly. I went to see her and laid out my plan. At first, she flatly refused, saying it was too dangerous and unethical, but after I told her the whole story, indignation replaced her professional principles. She agreed to help me on the condition that I made sure the hospital wouldn't be affected. With my friend's help, I got a fake ultrasound and pregnancy history. It clearly stated 13 weeks pregnant, normal development. 13 weeks. I had calculated the number with precision. If I was 13 weeks pregnant, the time of conception would coincide exactly with my trip to Geneva. That meant Julian couldn't be the father. I wanted to sow doubt in his mind, absolute suspicion. I wanted him to be tormented, to struggle with his own calculations. Would he think I had been unfaithful, or would he accept raising a child that wasn't his for the sake of the $50 million investment and Isabella's baby? This act of the play promised to be very interesting. That night, I came home with an expression of tiredness, but radiating happiness. During dinner, I accidentally dropped a fork. As I bent down to pick it up, I winced in pain and put my hand on my belly. Marion, my mother-in-law, who was very observant, asked instantly, "Alara, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" I looked up and smiled shyly. "It's nothing, Mom. I guess I've been a bit tired lately." Julian also asked worriedly, "Does something hurt, honey? Do you want me to take you to the doctor?" I shook my head, looking at him and the rest of the family with an expression of pure happiness. I took the ultrasound from my purse and gently placed it on the table. "No need to go to the doctor, honey, because I have some good news for the whole family." Everyone's eyes were fixed on the paper. Arthur was the first to pick it up. When he read aloud, 13 weeks pregnant, the room fell into a stunned silence. I saw Julian's face change from surprise to bewilderment and then to a pale panic. He looked at me, then at the paper with a look full of doubt and fear. My plan had worked. The first act of the end had begun. My good news was like a bomb in Julian's family. Arthur and Marion were ecstatic. For them, this grandchild was the ultimate guarantee of the $50 million investment, the heir to the empire they dreamed of building. They didn't doubt the truth of the pregnancy for a second, or perhaps they preferred not to. But Julian was different. In the following days, he lived in torment. I could see the confusion and internal struggle in his eyes. 13 weeks. That number obsessed him day and night. He wanted to ask me, but he didn't dare. He feared that if he did, everything would fall apart. The charade of the happy husband about to become a father would end, and his family's dream of wealth would be shattered. His greed and cowardice prevented him from facing the truth. Meanwhile, I knew the news of Isabella's pregnancy had already reached Marion's ears. Julian had surely told his mother, seeking her help, and a woman as practical and twisted as Marion already had her own plan. That Sunday, I told Julian I wanted to go to his parents' house to give them the good news and have a family meal. It was a trap I had set, and I knew they would fall for it. The meal passed in an atmosphere of fake joy. Marion kept serving me food, giving me all kinds of advice for pregnant women. She played the part of a loving mother-in-law perfectly, worried about her grandchild. After the meal, she called me to her room to talk, saying it was women's stuff. Julian and Arthur discreetly left. In her luxurious but cold bedroom, Marion took my hand and said in a soft, understanding voice, "Alara, honey, I know you've been through a lot lately. I know everything about Julian and that girl." I feigned surprise with teary eyes. "Mom, you knew?" She sighed, stroking my hand. "I'm his mother. How could I not know? Men are like that. Sometimes they have their fun outside. But the important thing is that in their heart, it's just you and your child. You see, he's recognized his mistake and come back to you. I know you're a compassionate woman. Forgive him." I lowered my head in silence, playing the part of the hurt wife, but willing to forgive. Seeing this, Marion got straight to the point. "And as for that girl, Isabella, she's actually a bit pathetic. She made a mistake, and now she's carrying this family's blood in her belly." She stopped to observe my reaction. Seeing that I said nothing, she continued with growing audacity. "I've thought about it carefully. After all, it's my grandchild, and abandoning it would be a shame. How about, well, you're also going to give birth soon, so we can kill two birds with one stone. We tell everyone you're having twins. When the other girl gives birth, we'll bring the baby home and you'll recognize it as yours. That way, we save the family's reputation and we don't lose a Davenport heir. What do you think?" Listening to those words, I felt nauseous. How could such a shameless woman exist, calmly proposing to her daughter-in-law that she raise her husband's illegitimate child? What did she think I was? An incubator, a tool to legalize her son's misdeeds. I was prepared for the worst. But still, her true face disgusted me. However, a smile formed on my lips. I had secretly activated my phone's voice recorder, which was in my purse. The entire conversation, every one of her inhumane words, was being recorded. I looked up and faced her with innocence. "Mom, so I'd have to raise both babies. Do you think I'll be able to handle everything?" Marion, seeing that I didn't object, was overjoyed. "Don't worry, we'll hire help. You just have to be their mother for legal purposes. Julian will be eternally grateful to you, and the whole family will be too. Think about it. It's the best solution for everyone." "Okay, Mom, I'll think about it," I replied in an obedient voice. I left my in-laws' house with the valuable recording in my possession. It would be irrefutable proof, the knockout blow that would end the honor of their entire family. Everything was ready for the final act. After the conversation with my mother-in-law, I returned home feeling a mix of disgust and satisfaction. The recording on my phone was my ace in the hole, the definitive proof of the shamelessness of their entire family. Now everything was following the script I had written. My fake pregnancy, along with Isabella's real one, had become two powerful narcotics that had made Julian's family completely lose their reason, leaving only a blind greed. They believed they were about to get it all, a multi-million-dollar investment to salvage their company and not one, but two heirs. This belief made them reckless and careless. The next day, my mother, Eleanor, sent the new investment contract to Davenport Industries. It was a contract that Leo and I had carefully rewritten. On the outside, it looked even more generous than the previous one, with very attractive clauses about profits and technical support. But inside, it hid extremely restrictive legal clauses, subtle financial traps that, with the slightest carelessness, could cost them everything. Normally, Arthur, a man with some business experience, would have scrutinized it, but now his mind was clouded by the vision of a brilliant future. Plus, with me pregnant and personally supervising from the company, they were convinced it was a mere formality. Arthur and Julian signed the contract without hesitation. The moment Arthur's pen touched the paper, I knew the fate of Davenport Industries was sealed. To start the new project, according to the grandiose plans they had drawn up, they needed a considerable initial capital, but their company had been empty for a long time. The $50 million investment from Apex Holdings, according to the contract, would be released in phases only after Davenport Industries completed the corresponding stages. This forced them to get the initial funds on their own, and this is where I came into play. As a supervisor, I started making reasonable demands to accelerate the project. I asked them to hire an expensive team of foreign consultants to import the most modern machinery and to make large deposits for high-end materials. These were all huge expenses. Cornered, father and son had no choice but to start taking out loans. The banks had closed their doors to them long ago due to their history of defaults. Their only option was private lenders with usurious interest. They mortgaged the mansion, the cars, mobilized every possible resource, entering a spiral of debt like moths attracted to a flame. They believed they only had to hold on for a bit. As soon as Apex Holdings started injecting money, all their problems would be solved. Every day at the office, I saw them desperate, looking for money, humbling themselves before menacing-looking thugs. Seeing their anguished and haggard faces, I felt no satisfaction, only a terrifying coldness inside. How stupid people can become when greed blinds them. They were digging their own graves while happily believing they were building a paradise. The noose had closed. Only the final blow was missing. After almost 2 months of tormenting Julian's family in their own financial trap, I knew the moment had come. Davenport Industries was up to its neck in debt, depending completely on our imminent investment. It was time to lower the curtain. I told Julian that to officially announce the collaboration and celebrate the good news of the family, I wanted to organize a big party. A party to reaffirm Davenport Industries' position and silence the rumors about its poor financial situation. Julian and his family went crazy with joy. It was exactly what they had been waiting for, a high-profile event to announce to the world that they were back stronger than ever, with the backing of the powerful Apex Holdings. Without hesitation, they accepted and gave me free rein to organize everything. I chose the grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel, one of the most luxurious and expensive 5-star hotels in Chicago. I sent invitations to the entire business elite, to major partners, to banks, and of course to the press. I wanted everyone to be there to witness the fall of the Davenport family. That night, Julian's family arrived very early. They wore their finest clothes with faces radiating arrogance and triumph. Arthur walked around greeting important guests as the host of the party. Marion, covered in diamonds, laughed and boasted about her brilliant daughter-in-law and future grandchild. Julian didn't leave my side, a possessive arm around my waist, playing the part of the loving husband and successful man about to achieve glory. They didn't know that everything was a grand stage I had set. Every congratulation, every look of admiration was an invisible knife that inflated their ego so the fall would be even more painful. I was the center of attention in a sapphire blue evening gown, smiling and greeting everyone. The dress was designed to hide my flat stomach. I looked at my husband and his family, immersed in their fake glory, feeling nothing. This would be their last party, and I would be the one to blow out the candles on this cake of destiny. The stage was set, the actors in their places. All that was left was for the curtain to rise on the final tragedy. When the party was at its peak, the soft music suddenly stopped. All the lights in the ballroom went out except for a spotlight that illuminated me. As I walked onto the stage, all eyes were on me. The silence became absolute. Julian's family looked at me with pride, thinking I was going to give a speech to honor them and announce the project of the century. I smiled, a radiant smile, but without warmth. I took the microphone and my clear voice resonated in the room. Good evening and welcome to everyone for joining us today. I am Alara Vance, CEO of Apex Holdings and, as you know, the wife of Julian Davenport. I paused, looking at Julian. He smiled, encouraging me. I turned to the audience. Today is a very special day. I'm here to share a couple of stories with you, stories about the truth. With that, I signaled to the technician. On the large screen behind me, instead of a project video, a recording began to play. Don't worry, Mom. My wife is clueless. She'll buy whatever story I spin for her. It was Julian's arrogant voice, the same one I had heard from behind the door. A murmur rippled through the room. The smile froze on the faces of Julian and his family. They were stunned, not understanding a thing. The first recording ended and the second began. This time it was Marion's voice. We tell everyone you're having twins. When the other girl gives birth, we'll bring the baby home and you'll recognize it as yours. At that moment, scandal erupted. People started whispering, and all the looks of astonishment, contempt, pity were fixed on the Davenport family, who were petrified in their seats. I let the chaos calm down a bit before continuing in a firm voice. Ladies and gentlemen, for 4 years I lived in a perfectly orchestrated stage play. They approached me and married me with one single goal: the $50 million of Apex Holdings. They treated me like an idiot, a tool for their gain. I looked directly at Julian, who was trembling, pale as a ghost. The husband I loved with all my heart, was unfaithful to me and conspired with his family to deceive me. Then I turned to Marion, and she, the mother-in-law I respected deeply, had the audacity to propose that I raise my husband's illegitimate child, an indecent proposal that no woman could accept. I put my hand on my stomach where everyone believed a life was growing. And this pregnancy, I said bitterly, was also part of my revenge plan. I am not pregnant. A gasp ran through the room, but the shock wasn't over. And as for his mistress's child, I continued with a sharp gaze, I would also like to inform you of something, Julian. That baby isn't yours either. Before she left, she confessed everything to me. You were just one of her many sources of income. At the same time, in another location, my mother was holding an urgent press conference. All the evidence of tax and accounting fraud from Davenport Industries was being made public. The curtain had fallen. The truth was exposed, naked under the stage lights. My last words were like a thunderbolt, not only for Julian's family, but for everyone present. The party turned into a chaotic scene. Camera flashes were incessant. Journalists flocked to get the best photo of the disgraced family. Marion couldn't bear the shock and fainted right there. Julian stood like a pillar of salt, looking at me soullessly, babbling nonsense words. But the first to fall was Arthur. Hearing his company's dirty laundry being aired and facing public humiliation, he put his hand to his chest, turned purple, and collapsed. A heart attack. Shouts. People calling for an ambulance. The grand party ended in a tragic and chaotic scene. From the stage, I watched everything in silence. I felt no joy, only an icy emptiness. The revenge had ended, but it left a bitter taste. In a single night, the empire the Davenport family had tried to build on a lie collapsed completely. The next morning, all the newspapers opened with the Davenport Industries scandal. The company's shares plummeted to worthlessness. In a matter of hours, banks and above all the private lenders came to collect their debts. The mansion, the cars, all their properties were seized. They went from living in luxury to being penniless paupers. The family disintegrated. Arthur survived the heart attack but was left with half his body paralyzed, bedridden. Marion lost her mind upon waking, spending her days crying and cursing, and Julian, from being a handsome vice president, became unemployed with a multi-million-dollar debt and a bleak future. He had to take his parents to live in a small, dirty, rented apartment in a working-class neighborhood. The fall was quick and brutal. It was the price they paid for their greed and their lies. I had achieved justice for myself, but the scar on my heart would probably never fully heal. Days after the fateful party, when the waters had calmed, I decided to go to the hospital, not to visit Arthur, but to complete my last act for the public. I needed to project the image of a betrayed but magnanimous woman, a noble victim. It was important for my image, and that of Apex Holdings. Dressed simply, with little makeup and a fruit basket, I entered the hospital, followed by some journalists who had casually been tipped off. I went to Arthur's room. Only Julian was inside. He was emaciated with a multi-day beard and wrinkled clothes. He looked like a ghost. When he saw me, he flinched with a mixture of hatred and fear in his eyes. I ignored him and left the basket on the table. I looked at Arthur, motionless in the bed, and then turned to Julian. After all, he was my father-in-law. I've come to see how he is, I said calmly. Julian didn't respond. Maybe he didn't know what to say. He hated me, but his family started it all. I stayed for about 5 minutes, long enough for the photographers to get their shots, and then I turned to leave. In the hallway, Julian ran after me and stopped me. He suddenly knelt, crying inconsolably in the middle of the hospital hallway. "Alara, please forgive my family. We have nothing left. My father is paralyzed. We don't have money for medicine. Could you lend us some money for the love we once had? I beg you." I looked at him coldly, kneeling at my feet. The love we once had. He still dared to mention it. Even in this situation, he only thought about money. I brushed his hand away from my leg and took a step back. I took a few coins from my wallet, the ones I used for the parking meter, and threw them on the ground. "You want money? There you go. It's all you deserve from me," I said with contempt. "And don't ever appear in my life again, or next time we'll meet at the police station." With that, I turned and left without looking back. Behind me, I heard his sobs of rage and despair. The play had truly ended. After the divorce and resolving all matters, my life slowly returned to normal. I threw myself into work to forget the bad memories. Under my and my mother's direction, Apex Holdings grew and expanded. The professional achievements partly soothed the pain of the betrayal, but Julian wouldn't leave me alone. Having lost everything, he seemed to have lost his mind as well. He started following me. Sometimes I would see his familiar figure loitering near the office or my front door. He didn't approach. He just watched me from a distance with a complex expression. At first, I ignored him, thinking he would get tired. It was during that time that I reconnected with Liam at an economics conference. Liam was the founder of a promising tech startup, a brilliant, honest, and passionate young entrepreneur. We had been classmates in college, but lost touch. When we saw each other again, we connected right away. He was smart, funny, and most importantly, sincere. With him, I felt at peace. I felt like I could be myself again, a feeling I had forgotten for a long time. We started dating. Liam knew my story from the news, but he never asked. He simply stayed by my side, taking care of me and showing his affection with actions. Little by little, my icy heart began to melt. Liam's presence in my life drove Julian crazy. He was no longer content with just watching from a distance. He started sending me threatening messages filled with sick jealousy. One night, while Liam and I were having dinner at a restaurant, he burst in to confront Liam. Security had to intervene to remove him. His harassment became intolerable, and I knew I couldn't keep ignoring him. I needed to have one last conversation with him, one to settle the matter once and for all. I decided to meet him, not in a public place, but in our old mansion, which was now my property after the divorce. I wanted him to face everything he had lost. Julian arrived at the meeting looking even more pathetic than he had at the hospital. He was skeletal with tired and sunken eyes and clothes that were old and worn. He looked like a ghost. When he saw me, he lunged to grab my hand. "Alara, you finally wanted to see me. I knew it. I knew deep down you still loved me." I stepped back, keeping my distance. "Don't get your hopes up. I called you to clear things up once and for all." "Clear what up, Alara?" he pleaded. "We can start over. I know I made a mistake. I'll fix it. I'll do anything to make it up to you. We were happy. Have you forgotten?" I laughed, a cold laugh. Happy? The kind that's built on lies and deception. "Julian, do you know why you failed so miserably?" He looked at me confused. "Because you're stupid and arrogant," I said in a sharp voice. "You thought I didn't know anything, that I was easy to fool. But you were wrong. Everything from the moment I came back from Geneva was part of my plan. The fake clock, the encounter at the restaurant, the investment contract, the fake pregnancy. I orchestrated it all. I've been 2 steps ahead of you this whole time." I told him my plan in detail without omitting anything. I wanted him to know that he was never the winner, just a puppet in the play that I myself had directed. As I spoke, Julian's face changed from hope to astonishment, then to horror, and finally to despair. He backed away, looking at me as if I were a monster. "No, it can't be. You deceived me." "Exactly," I affirmed. "I just treated you the way you treated me. You taught me a lesson that in this life you can't trust anyone. Now it's over. Get out of my life. If you keep following or harassing me, this recording is going straight to the police." I held up my phone, showing him the audio file with his threats. It was enough evidence to send him to jail for a few years. Julian looked at the phone and then at me, his will and the little pride he had left shattered. He collapsed to the ground, crying silently. A man who had lost everything: family, career, love, and even his dignity. The play had truly ended. After that last encounter, Julian disappeared completely from my life. He no longer followed me. No more messages. The harsh truth I revealed to him had destroyed him. Sometime later, I read a small note in the newspaper. Arthur, after a long treatment, had regained some mobility in speech. The first thing he did was to send a public apology letter to my mother and me through his lawyer. In it, he admitted all of his family's mistakes, the greed that had blinded them, and asked society for forgiveness. It was an intelligent gesture. Though belated, it wouldn't save their company or restore what they had lost, but at least it allowed them to retain a last shred of honor. The curtain on the Davenport charade fell definitively amid ruin and regret. As for Isabella, as I had foreseen, after receiving a large sum of money and learning the truth about the pregnancy, she also disappeared silently. She was smart enough to understand that staying in Chicago would bring her nothing good. A very expensive lesson for a young woman who had taken a wrong turn. My life from then on became peaceful. The ghosts of the past stopped haunting me. I was able to dedicate myself completely to building my future. The relationship between Liam and I progressed naturally and solidly. He was not a substitute for Julian. He was a completely new chapter in my life. He brought me trust, respect, and a sincere love without calculations. We decided to get married after a year of dating. Our wedding wasn't ostentatious. Only family and close friends attended, but it was full of happiness and warmth. My mother looked at me in my wedding dress with teary eyes, took Liam's hand and asked him to take good care of her only daughter. Shortly after the wedding, I discovered I was truly pregnant. This feeling was completely different from the fake pregnancy. It was a sacred joy, a sweet anticipation. Liam cried with happiness. He took care of me with infinite care, not letting me do the slightest thing. Apex Holdings, under my leadership and with my mother's support, became stronger and stronger, expanding throughout the region. I had proven my worth, not as the CEO's daughter, but as a true businesswoman. I had a new life, a new family, a full and serene happiness. Months later, I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy. He was identical to Liam. Looking at my son sleeping in my arms, I felt that my life had never been so complete. All the pain, all the damage from the past seemed to have healed. One afternoon, while watching TV in the living room, a brief report on entrepreneurs who, after a period of glory, had fallen into disgrace, was broadcast on the economic news. And there I saw Julian. He appeared on screen not as a successful businessman, but as a debtor on the national risk list. He looked 10 years older, haggard with dark skin and old clothes. He was answering a journalist's questions at a roadside diner. When asked about his past mistakes, he lowered his head and smiled bitterly. "It was my fault, only mine. You reap what you sow. Good and evil are paid for. There's no doubt about that." Liam came over and gently turned off the TV. He put his arm around my shoulders, saying nothing. I rested my head on his shoulder, smiling serenely. The past was finally behind me. Ahead of me, there was only a bright future with the man I loved and our little son. I had turned the game of my life around and had finally found my true happiness. Thank you for following this story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to join us in more stories like this. If you want to watch another life story, click the video on screen. I promise you'll love it.